Hey everybody, I'm Mike Hayes from Factory Connection. Today we're going to talk about the SFF app that was released for the iPhone. Within the tack fork, we all know that air pressures are used instead of conventional springs, and we're going to guide you through some of the basics of how to set those pressures and to use the app. The inner pressure is basically your mainspring or the coil spring of old. The outer air pressure is a helper pressure if that's available to you, and you can kind of equate that to the oil level. And then the balance pressure would be for the initial movement, or some people might equate this to preload. Rest assured that in the one leg it's an air fork, and then in the other leg all the hydraulics are happening. So there's still valving in there. There's a setting from the OEs that was put in there originally. And then of course we're here to help you to step outside of that generic setting and build a custom setting for you. You still need to change the clickers and work with your compression and rebound clickers in conjunction with the air pressures. Just keep in mind that the air pressures, what you're doing is choosing the spring rate. So once you get that spring rate settled, you're probably going to be fairly static, and you'll just work forward using those numbers from week to week and just making sure the pressures are properly set. Alright, so now let's take a look at the app. First and foremost, you need to get in there and set it up. There is a little gear button, and you're going to get it to a setup menu. You're going to choose the right bike, set your weight, the pressures, and what have you. It's fairly obvious. You'll get through that quickly. Once you're through that, and it's important to do that and make sure that you've chosen the right things. If not, you're not going to get the proper answers from the graph section itself. The graph section, that's where you're going to spend most of your time. At the top is the graph. In the middle are some radio buttons to turn the graph lines on and off, and then to make one of them active or not. And then in the bottom are the pressures themselves. So when you're working with the app, you're going to find that as you slide the pressures around or choose the numerical values by tapping on the box and setting your pressures for the inner-outer imbalance, that you're going to affect the line. It's going to move up and down. You're also going to see a white horizontal line and a red vertical line. And you want your reaction force line, or the force line in the app, to cross the white line within that red band. You can be on the left, in the middle, or on the right, but it's important that your line crosses right in that red section. So you're probably going to start with the OEM recommended settings if you haven't had any work done. If you've already had your bike worked on by a company like ourselves, then you're going to start at the recommended pressures that came with your pamphlet. Once you get out to the track, make sure that you start your pressures at the beginning of the day where they need to be. They do move due to changes in air temperature, barometric pressure, and what have you. So make sure that you set your pressures with the bike up on the stand, the wheel fully extended, and then set the inner first, then the outer, and then the balance. And it's important that you set them in that order. Once you get out and you start riding, you're going to take notes on how that felt. Then you can come back, use the app to kind of decide whether you want more initial hold up or more bottoming resistance or what have you. Play with those sliders and understand which each one of those do. And then you can go back out and test again. If the fork hasn't cooled all the way down to what we'll call outside temperature or ambient temperature, then you need to be careful when you're setting your pressures. If there's any built up pressure due to the fork having been used, because there's always heat generated, and that's one of the reasons why the pressures will increase with use. Whatever the gauge says, if you had it in mind to go up 5 psi from wherever you were, just accept that hot value and go up 5 and then go back out. And then ultimately you need to get the fork all the way back down to normal outside air temperature, set your pressures properly, and validate your final set of numbers. Once you're using the app, be careful you're not making really big swings. About the width of one line is a change. So if you're looking at the two lines and you can see just one stacked on top of the other with no gap in between the lines, I'm going to say that this is a change. If you can see any sort of a gap between the two lines, then you're making bigger changes. It's not a case where you need to see, a great big black area that's in the background of that app between the two lines. That would be a significant change. So it is more sensitive than you think, and be careful how much you start swinging those things. Once you've found the right pressures for you, it's kind of like choosing a spring rate, and you're not going to vary this from week to week and track to track and morning to afternoon. That's not the goal behind the air fork. The air fork, it saves weight, there's less friction, there's a bunch of other cost advantages. There are a lot of positives to the air fork. However, it's just setting up your spring. So once you find a set of numbers that work for you, that's probably where you're going to stay. Make sure you check your pressures before every ride. If you ride on a Wednesday and then you're going to go back out on Friday for real, you need to double check the pressures again. If you ride in the morning and it's cool out and there's a big temperature change over the course of the day, even going into Moto 1, you need to check your pressures again. So just make sure that bike's up on the stand and the fork is back down to normal ambient temperature, and then check your 3 pressures, always in the proper order: inner, outer, and balance if available to you. I hope that helps you have a better understanding of how to use the app. Get out there, do some testing, have some fun, and if you need any help, don't forget to give us a call.